Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to my spoiler-free review of Harvestella. I put almost 100 hours into this game in the short time that it's been out, and I've loved the heck out of it. So I wanted to do a quick review slash discussion of the elements I enjoyed and places I think the game could be improved, things to look at if they were to attempt another title like it. I also kinda want to do a spoiler-filled version where I just rant about the game's story, but that's gonna have to hold off. Just feel like I need a way to let loose a little bit. Now, for those who don't know what this game is, Harvestella is a farm sim RPG developed by Livewire and published by Square Enix. It is available on the Nintendo Switch and Steam with a release price of $60 US. That price tag definitely gave people some hesitation. Between the surface level perception of the game based on marketing and the incredibly busy game season making people make a ton of tough choices, everyone wants to know if this is really worth the price tag, even if they want to pick it up later. My answer is absolutely. This is one of my favorite JRPGs I've played in recent times, and it is very high on my recommendation list for any JRPG fan. That must sound weird given I just described the game as a farm sim RPG. While it's true that Harvestella presents as a farm sim game set in an RPG landscape, the delivery of the game leans more towards being a 50 to 60 hour JRPG story with farm sim elements mixed in. We'll cover that in a little bit more detail later on. So let me just hit on the more traditional elements so we can focus on the game itself. The graphics and graphic style work quite well for this kind of title, taking on a simple and colorful 3D design that aims for consistency over realism. It's helped by the character portraits used in dialogue boxes to add expression to the character's line delivery. Speaking of which, the game does not feature voice acting for most of the main story. Characters do exchange dialogue during actual boss fights, or maybe say a few lines while exploring the world, but it's otherwise a much more text-based adventure. That might be a bit of a letdown for some, but that just lets you get really into the intense and emotional soundtrack for this game. Composed by Go Shiina, the composer for the majority of the Demon Slayer anime and movie, as well as many other things, the game has a mix of orchestral and vocal tracks that range anywhere from absolute bangers to pieces that might tear down the emotional walls around your heart. Some stories and plotlines in this game are given tremendous weight thanks to the score, and it's one for those JRPG enthusiasts to eventually add to their playlist down the line. That is, when it's available somewhere other than iTunes Japan. Another point of disdain for many people will likely be the character creator. It's basically two androgynous templates with the ability to change their skin color, hair color, and eye color. One cool thing the game does do is, depending on what you actually set for those colors, your in-game character portrait will reflect those choices, but I know a lot of people would like a more in-depth character creator. Didn't bother me, but had to make mention of it. The game's performance on the Switch was largely acceptable, an average of 2 to 3 second load times and 20 to 30 FPS in most places. Some particles show significant slowdown in the game, things such as wind effects, and older SD cards might hiccup on the loads on occasion, but it wasn't enough to get me to stop playing that version. However, the Steam version is definitely better, 60 to 120 FPS and nearly instant load screens if you have an SSD. But, in case you're a mouse and keyboard user, it's really just keyboard for this game, no real mouse functionality. Controller, however, does work great. Now, at the start of the game, Harvestella focuses largely on pushing the JRPG narrative, explaining the world and how it works. While doing this, you'll get a house and a farm and can go about living your daily life. The farming elements early on are bare bones, but gradually expand as you get further into the story. Livestock, alternate farming biomes, and enhanced tools and machines open up a wider array of new means to enjoy your farm. You'll craft foods for selling and exploring, and expect to spend at least some portion of every in-game day focusing on your farm work. Oh, and of course, fishing. That being said, the farm work is much more supplementary to the RPG aspects of the game than the other way around. You'll more often be working towards direct goals and less just for the sake of income, like trying to make specific recipes for deliveries or complete certain objectives to obtain new features. Thus, it's less of a farm sim RPG and more of a JRPG with a farm sim built in. It's really like your primary way to earn currency to power up for dungeons and bosses as you complete the story. You'll also feel the need to move forward in the story to unlock a lot of key features for your farm and home. Heck, even the game's marriage system is locked behind completion of the entire main story, so just know that even if you want to live the simple life, you'll always need to dip into the not-so-simple life to make it better. Then there is the game's story. I want to talk about it so much because honestly, the story, the world, and its themes are all so deep, emotional, and quite frankly, wild. It's that kind of JRPG story that makes you throw your hands in the air out of complete disbelief, while also just accepting that it's just some classic JRPG craziness. And while the game's main story is a constant tug on the heartstrings, the side and character quests are more like pianos being tied to each and every artery. Side quests are designed more like traditional RPG quests. You might have to fetch a few items or go to a specific spot at a specific time, etc., whatever the character asks you to do. Character quests are a lot more about going to a location and just spending time with your party members and friends in the game, kind of reminiscent of the Persona titles. But both styles of quests are used to dive into deep life themes and character insecurities that become a constant point of motivation for the characters moving forward. Vengeance, loneliness, loss, misperception, misunderstanding, alcoholism, guilt, the list goes on and on. It's incredibly text-rich and backed by that amazing soundtrack, a lot of these quests were very emotional for me. Now, to find and complete these quests and stories, you'll explore around a world map filled with towns and dungeons that each offer their own challenges. However, all of these activities, including your farm life, all fall under your daily timer. Through most of the game, you'll wake up at 6 a.m. and have until roughly 1 a.m. to do your activities. While you're exploring around the world, it's roughly 1 second to 1 minute in-game, but the world map expedites that as you move across it. Once you hit midnight in particular, you start to get a bit sleepy, and for the next minute or so, your eyes slowly close until you pass out. This will just send you home and cost you a little bit of money, same as dying, but it means you'll be thinking about budgeting your time a lot. Adventuring out in dungeons also becomes tougher after 10 p.m. as your damage will be cut in half, kind of your encouragement to maybe go home for the night. Speaking of seasonal changes, the game's story focuses around this event called Quietus, the Season of Death. This occurs for 1 day between every season, killing all of your basic crops, but offering you a little surprise if you look around your farm. I won't say much else about it, but get familiar with it throughout your playthrough. Now, outside of the farm life, you'll be adventuring through dungeons I mentioned as you progress the story. The game features a simple action RPG combat with a heavy emphasis on type-based weaknesses and job classes with different identities. It plays very basically with you looking for opportunities to attack through your longer animations and then trying to skirt around the AoEs and basic assaults in between. You can't dodge super well in this game, so you'll want to be stocked up on foods and drinks to help with healing, and that'll really get you a much further way throughout the game. May I offer you an egg in these trying times? In combat, you'll be able to equip up to 3 jobs, each with up to 4 abilities for you to swap between. These jobs offer unique playstyles and cross-job passives that can let you play as an all-rounder or focus on the job identities you find most fun. You'll unlock most of these things by earning job points when defeating enemies and unlocking them via each job skill tree, while also leveling up to increase your stats. It's a really simple but satisfying progression system, supplemented by basic weapon upgrades, accessory upgrades, and party members that you collect throughout the story. And of course, food. By hitting enemy weaknesses, you can break opponents to make them take more damage. By performing 2 different element breaks, you can do a double break and open them up to a party special attack. Each party member has their own unique special to use during a double break, and these can range from massive damage to support for the team. It means not having the right attacks to hit an enemy's weakness can be a bit of a struggle at times, but hey, trial and error goes a long way. All in all, Harvestella was so much more than I was prepared for. The length of a AAA RPG mixed in with incredible pacing, deep storytelling, an amazing soundtrack, and just a fantastic world to explore. The farming sim aspects could be improved with some quality of life stuff, and the lack of voice acting may be a drag for some. But any big JRPG fan will likely find themselves enthralled and endlessly pulled into this world until you unravel all of its secrets. And that's going to be a wrap for my spoiler-free review of Harvestella. I have so much more I could say about this game, but I think I've made all my most major points. With that, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned for probably a more spoilery version. I have an idea of how I want to do that video, but we'll see if I get around to it now that Tactics Ogre is out. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one, and until then, take care.